really hot and really bright out, as you can kind of see, but I am here in Marceline, Missouri, which is pretty much in northern Missouri, in the middle, kind of. And this is actually where Walt Disney grew up. This was his boyhood town, and we are touring the Walt Disney Hometown Museum, which is located in the old train depot here in the town. So this is where Walt Disney would have first arrived in Marceline. He would have arrived on the other side of the building, so let's just take a quick walk back there. So this train platform here is where Walt Disney would have first arrived in Marceline, and when he was young, he and his brother Roy would be they would have frequented this area holding hands to watch the trains go by, and then Walt's uncle would oftentimes bring him along on train rides. So by the time they left Marceline, about 5 years after arriving here, he had already logged tons of train hours. Following when he was here as a child, Walt Disney actually visited Marceline, Missouri 3 different times. Once in the 1940s to get inspiration for Disneyland, and you will see that when we head down to Main Street in a few minutes. The second time was in 1956 for the dedication of the town's pool, which is named after him. The pool, unfortunately, is drained this summer. It's the first summer it's been drained since 1956. And then the last time would have been a few years later, in I think 1960 or so. He came back again for another dedication. So a good portion of the collection here at the Walt Disney Hometown Museum was actually donated by Walt's younger sister, Ruth. So this entire wing of the museum, which features letters and pictures and other memorabilia, was donated by Ruth when she died. So the owner and curator of this museum drove all the way out to Oregon to go get memorabilia, and actually came back with an entire truckload of stuff that now makes up this museum. So that's pretty great. So up on the top floor of the museum, they have a bunch of recreations of areas from Walt's childhood. And in addition, they also have a model of Disneyland done by an artist that used some of the original blueprints. So if we go over here, this is like the Yale Corner, and there's all kinds of them throughout this back area. Farm where Walt Disney lived with his family, there was a tree. It's a cottonwood tree called the Dreaming Tree, which Walt found when he came back here in 1956. There we go. Which he found when he came back here in 1956, and that tree has since fallen and died. However, this is a branch that fell from the original tree, and it has been preserved. Seeds from that original tree were actually taken, and a new tree stands in pretty much the same place, and is actually a direct descendant of Walt Disney's original tree. Another direct descendant of this tree actually exists at Disneyland on Tom Sawyer Island, and it was dedicated for the 50th anniversary, so you can go see it there. Well, here you can actually see the original desk, so there's Walt Disney's initials in the desk that he carved. This was used by him in 1908. When he was in first grade here in Marceline. And the copy of this desk is the one that's at Walt Disney World. You can still see it in London Stream. So behind me you can see one of the original Midget Autopia cars, which was retired from Disneyland Park in 1966. It sat adjacent to the Storybook Canal boats, so basically where It's a Small World is. In fact, that's what replaced his attraction. But when it was retired, Walt Disney himself decided that it should come here to Marceline, Missouri for the children that lived here, and while unfortunately he was unable to make the opening of that in July of 1966 because his health wasn't very good, the Midget Autopia did open and sat here, and actually the tracks for it were just taken down last week They're going to try and restore the original attraction closer to the museum. So hopefully that comes to be a real thing. But in the meantime, you can see one of the original Midget Autopia cars here at the Walt Disney Hometown Museum. So this giant Coca-Cola painting on the wall behind me was just redone by the Coca-Cola Company because this is actually a wall that was painted in roughly 1906, which is when the Disney family first arrived in Marceline. So Walt had fond memories of this wall, and he actually cited it pretty much, and they believe, to be the inspiration for Coke Corner at Disneyland on Main Street. Here in downtown Marceline on Main Street is the Uptown Theater, which is actually where they held the Midwest premiere of the Great Locomotive Chase in 1956. Walt and Roy personally greeted each child at the door, and then they had a special performance of the Mickey Mouse Club, and there's now a train going through, of course, when I wanted it to go through earlier. But yeah, so this is where they had that premiere, and they also premiered The Spirit of Mickey here years later. And when they originally did the Great Locomotive Chase, they actually ran the movie continuously from 1:30 p.m. till 1:30 a.m. the next morning, so everyone in the town could see it. Here in Marceline, we have the original Main Street USA. So this is the Main Street that would have inspired Walt Disney to create Main Street USA at Disneyland and Walt Disney World. Walt Disney came back in the 1940s to take pictures of his hometown for inspiration for Main Street and Disneyland because he wanted every child to have that experience of the small Midwestern hometown, sort of like this one. After Walt's death in 1966, got the right year, he was 65 years old, the U.S. Postal Service issued a stamp commemorating Walt Disney. And it was kind of an argument between Anaheim, Burbank, Marceline, and then Chicago as to where this commemorative stamp would be issued. And Marceline won out, so that commemorative stamp was issued here at this post office in Marceline, Missouri. Here outside of Marceline, just outside, actually stands a replication of the, oh gosh, a bug, of the barn that Walt was so fond of as a child. And you can actually go inside. And so this barn was actually built based on plans that Walt drew up from his memory, and one just like this stood in his home, at his home, which would have been his workshop. And the plans were originally drawn up for a film, So Dear to My Heart. So Dear to My Heart, and that barn in that film was based on the barn that was here in Marceline, so the barn that you're seeing here. Now here in the barn you can actually leave your own autograph and message for Walt. So all of these walls, even up in the rafters, are just filled with signatures and autographs and messages to Walt thanking him, and that's really awesome. They keep things here in the barn so that you can sign it too. We are here at our final stop in Marceline. We are just outside of the city, and we are here at the Son of the Dreaming Tree. So as I said back at the museum, the original tree has died, but this one is a direct descendant of that tree, and it is growing pretty well, I would say, here still in Marceline. You can also visit the home of Walt Disney, but you can't go inside. It's a privately owned property, but as we found out today, this entire property is exactly the same for the most part as when Walt was here. It's the same size, same acreage, all that kind of thing. And yeah, you can come visit his dreaming tree here in Marceline.
You see, I'm an expert at this. It's called one-handed driving.
Oh God.